Hey, happy President's Day. There's not a new president in Jacksonville, but there is new leadership. And I'll talk to you about what I think it means for the players and certain individual players. And we'll also have a little draft talk in segment 3 here on Locked On Jaguars.
You are Locked On Jags, your daily Jacksonville Jaguars podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
My theme music playing there. What's going on, man? Welcome to Locked On Jaguars on a Monday. We thank you for making us your first listen as usual because it's your team every day. And our show today is brought to you by BetOnline.net because BetOnline.net has you covered this season with more props, odds, and lines than ever before. BetOnline is where the game starts. Well, the Jaguars had a bit of an eventful offseason in terms of trying to find their coach and get their new coach, trying to, the process lasted longer than people liked. It seemed like there was a big mess going day after day after day after day. And it's been well chronicled because we talked about it here on Locked On Jaguars. But they finally did, settle on Doug Peterson. And he has been fast and furious in getting his staff put together. Now, the impressive thing to me is that he seemed to go out and be able to get exactly who he wanted to be the coaches here for the Jacksonville Jaguars. And I've been real impressed by his ability to go out and get guys that are NFL guys that are player friendly, that you've heard players from other teams where these guys have come from rave about them. They seem like they're good teachers. But one of the things that I want to really focus on today is they really seem like it's not all fluff, and it's not so much about slogans and swag and the things that you've heard in the past, especially this past season. It's not so much about that as it is about insulating the players, making sure that the players have every resource at their beck and call, not bragging about it, but having good teachers. So in segment 2, I'm going to talk about the quarterbacks, how many ex-quarterbacks are on this staff and what that means for Trevor Lawrence. What I want to talk about now, though, is the hiring of Mike Caldwell as the defensive coordinator, along with Brinson Buckner, who came over from Arizona. I know a lot of people, the first thing that folks are going to think of is, does this mean that we're going to get prospective free agents from those teams where these guys come from? Deshae Townsend is a part of the staff as well. I don't necessarily think that was a priority. I do believe that it might help in that regard, but I don't think if you're Doug Peterson, you made hires based on attracting free agents from certain teams. I think if you're Doug Peterson, you make those sound hires because you have a working relationship with guys like Mike Caldwell. Those guys have reputations. And you have a history. Press Taylor, same thing. We'll talk about that in segment 2. It's the same thing. You have guys that I almost want to think about the relationship that when you watch from the Super Bowl, the relationship that Doug Peterson had when he communicated with Nick Foles during timeouts, the things you saw in NFL films, the way the Bucs and Mike Caldwell was a part of that staff, the way it seemed the Bucs communicated with their players, where look, I'm the boss, but we're kind of all in here together. You know what I'm saying? And you have to move on one accord. Not players having to hug coaches on the sideline and give press conferences on Tuesday about what coach said what. And I really hate to harp on it, but in real time, when last year, when I used to do these shows and I used to try to tell you without actually telling you about this dysfunction, the level of incoherent dysfunction that was holding and weighting down this franchise. It was ridiculous under Urban Meyer, and it was pretty much amateur hour. It is like, I remember that movie when Bill Murray when they were in the Army. I can't think of it. It was funny, but it's like Clint Eastwood when he went to the Marine base and these dudes were doing their own thing, and they had absolutely no discipline. And it's not because the players didn't want it. I want to make this clear. I am not talking about what the players did or didn't do. I'm talking about what they were led into and how they were acting based on their leadership. And so far, it's just a world of difference. The attitude is a lot different. The attitude is just, it's to me, and this is nothing against Gus or Doug Marrone or anything. This is the most trust, and I'm cautiously optimistic. And you see, I'm trying to pick my words. Um, I'm trying to pick my words very carefully here. I'm also doing that because I'm real sleepy because of insomnia. But the deal is I'm really, really trying to paint this picture of cautious optimism because I don't want to go over the top, and I'm not going to go over the top anyway because they're not sending you over the top with crazy slogans and making it sound like that we're just going to be able to recruit 2 5-star classes and all of a sudden everything's going to turn around. They're talking about hard work. They're talking about, look, it's not overnight. Guys played hard, but we didn't win a lot of games, and we got to figure this out. And the approach that they seem to take is one that probably warrants fans to give them some patience. The one thing I will mention about Mike Caldwell, and this is probably nitpicking, and see, people only do this on offense. Did he call plays? Or who's going to call plays? And how did he get a job and he didn't call play? They love to do that with offensive coordinators, but they have to also do it with defense. And one of the things that the Jaguars have seemingly done over, what was it, the last maybe 10 years, their defensive coordinator was always a guy who's a career defensive line coach. Their defensive coordinator, like Joe Cullen, defensive line coach. Before him, it was Todd Wash. Before him, it was Gus Bradley. And so you wonder, because conversations that I've had in the past with other people, they would always be concerned about the back end of the defense. For a while here, the Jaguars' back end was their strength, if you recall. But we got a guy now who, when you look at the most coaches and the most coordinators, like the easier path to be a coordinator in on offense is to at some point be a quarterback coach and then a play caller. And then you get the head coach. Well, the easiest path, I believe, to be a defensive coordinator is a linebacker. And I don't know if it's backed up by fact, but it would seem like to me if I was a guy coaching and I wanted to end up calling plays on defense, that linebacker, because you're in the middle of those two levels and you basically are the guy that's the glue between the front and the back. So you kind of know the back end and you know what's going on in front of you. It'd be an interesting thing to see if we could take I think DB might have them, but for me, this is the first time in a long time the Jaguars have a linebackers coach as their DC, and I think this is going to be different. I think it's going to be a little bit refreshing to get a little bit of a different view and a little bit of a different approach, like a guy like Robert Saleh, D'Amico Ryans this year. Wade Phillips was a defensive line / outside linebackers coach as well. And so there's a lot of different ways you get to it. Sometimes it's a DB coach, but I think that there's going to be a little bit of a difference now with Mike Caldwell and the fact that he played not too long ago. It's not like Mike Caldwell is a guy that, a lot of people don't know in the league because he was a player and he was a coach. And the thing that bodes well for me is Miles Jack, and then wondering what they're going to do in the draft, if they're just going to roll with Shaq Quarterman or if they're going to just create competition and get a couple of more guys. But I'm going to be real interested to see how those guys start to play and start to trigger and fire off, because I really want to get back to the days of Mike Peterson and Buck Darrell Smith. I don't think the Jaguars linebacker, even though Telvin was good and Pazlezis was good, the linebacking core that I remember being the strongest one was the Mike Peterson, Darrell Smith linebackers, and those two guys were interchangeable between Mike and Will. And just like Levante David and Devin White. And I'm looking forward to the Jaguars defense playing that way. All right, so we're going to talk about in segment 2 what I believe, and I'm going to tell you, I think the way that they've set up on offense with 4 former quarterbacks coaches, 4 former quarterbacks, they set this up for Trevor Lawrence to really, really be successful. I think they're going to work him. I think they're going to work him to death. But I also think it's going to be something that is good for Trevor, because I think Trevor wants to be worked hard, and I think he wants to ball out. So I can imagine when those guys are in the room with him, there's just 5 guys that have been quarterbacks their entire life, and they're going to do things to get things right. And I'll tell you how that can have a real positive influence on Trevor Lawrence and this entire team this year here for the Jacksonville Jaguars. And I'll do it here in just a second on a Monday, and most of you guys are chilling at the house, and that's cool. Segment 2 is on the way here on Locked On Jaguars. I want to tell you guys about Built Bar, man. Somebody sent a picture in our group DM of Built Bars on this shelf. And let me tell you something. You talk about planograms and product management and looking good and making you want to eat one. Just the sheer packaging and the way, the care that they've put into that really makes you know that Built Bar is a fabulous product, because it is. It's the best tasting protein bar on the market, and what's inside that package is just as good and as beautiful as what's on the outside of the package. I personally prefer the salted caramel edition. That's my favorite one. I don't like a lot of change. I would eat other ones, if I did not have access to salted caramel, but I do. All right. And you can try those puffs too. Puffs are the first ever protein infused marshmallow. They're fluffy, they're marshmallowy. And they're not just a protein bar, they're a treat. And they're covered with 100% real chocolate. Also, go to built.com and scroll down to the macros chart, and you'll be blown away by the high protein, low calorie, high fiber, low carb aspect of Built Bars. It's not chalky or waxy. It has the texture of a candy bar, and it has the taste of a treat that's like a candy bar. Sometimes it's like a brownie. Sometimes it's like a piece of cake, all of that stuff. All right. So you go to built.com and make sure you get your orders of Built Bars. They have all kinds of flavors. Check them out on Twitter at @bar_built for all of the latest information. And the latest here, man, is I give it to you every day here on Locked On Jaguars. Listen, you guys have to know that whether it's on YouTube or whether you get it wherever you get to wherever you get your podcast at, that we bring this to you every single day, because it's your team every day. We really, 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 really want to make sure that you understand that we try to bring you organic content and make it available to you every day. I drop the YouTube videos sometimes at different times of the day because of what's going on around me. So bear with me with that. Sometimes there's a Wi-Fi conflict or a recording conflict, whether I'm at home or whether I'm here in my office. There always seems to be like a maintenance man doing work, and then I'm doing it between clients also. So we make sure that we give it to you. And sometimes I really have to make sure that organically I come up with the things that I know fans want to talk about and the things they want to hear. And what you want to hear about now is your quarterback, Trevor Lawrence. Trevor Lawrence did not have the greatest rookie season, the one that most people probably expected. But if you're a Jaguars fan and you watch the games closely and you knew also the atmosphere and you could check the temperature on what was going on in the organization, you would know that there were a bunch of reasons and factors to why he may not have had the season that everyone thought that he was going to have. But if you paid close attention to it, you would not leave thinking away or go away thinking that Trevor Lawrence did not have what it takes to live up to all of the hype and expectations that people had on him. In fact, I'm sure he will, is because he didn't break. He never appeared afraid. He never stopped going hard. He never appeared to lose confidence, and he would still wow you and make a throw that you just could not believe. But I do think that there's a lot of, instead of standing around cheering for him, hoping that he'd be the savior on the field and at the podium on Tuesday because of all of the junk that was going on in the organization, I do think what they're going to do now with Doug Peterson, with Press Taylor, someone he's very, very familiar with, and they're like peas in the pod. And then you have Jim Bob Cooter, who has worked in New Orleans and other places and been around the quarterback game for a long time. And Mike McCoy, someone who was at one point was a head coach and a quarterback's coach, an offensive coordinator for a long, long time. He's going to be the quarterback's coach. I think it's very, very important that they insulate Trevor. And what I mean is, I don't mean protecting, but I mean everywhere he goes and every time he bumps into a wall, there's going to be a dude there that's going to be able to help him understand not just the mental aspects of the game, but I do believe that the physical aspects, the mental aspects, the psychological aspects, I think they're covering it on all fronts. Now, it's just not about his mechanics, but I do think that's going to be Mike McCoy's job. I think Mike McCoy is going to have Trevor Lawrence, and he's going to work on those mechanics every single day. He's going to work on what he sees. He's going to really work on the muscle memory aspect. I think with the strength conditioning program, they're going to build his body up. Quite frankly, there's going to be nothing about playing this position in the NFL that there's no rock that's going to be left unturned. And this is the approach I think that was really, really necessary under Doug Peterson. They have a lot of NFL experience in that room, in that quarterback room, and in that offensive room. It's not going to be just about drills. It's not going to be just about film. But I really think that they're going to tap into something with Trevor that we've all known that he has. And those are the cerebral parts of the game where they're going to talk football concepts. And if you notice, the coaches that were with guys the longest, whether it be Bruce Arians or Tom Moore with Peyton Manning, whether it be Tom Brady when he was with both Josh McDaniels and Bill O'Brien, whether it's and the real good example is Drew Brees and Sean Payton. These guys know each other and they have the same thought process. These guys all knew each other. It was football concepts. You knew that Drew Brees was thinking exactly what Sean Payton was hoping that he would think. Drew Brees was seeing exactly what Sean Payton wanted him to see. And Sean knew that Drew saw what he saw. And to me, that's a really, really, really big deal. And the way you get like that is to be the way I think the Jaguars are going to be. There's going to be 5 guys sitting around talking ball, talking football concepts, and getting an understanding and not a memory, not memorizing, but learning and understanding exactly what it is they're trying to accomplish at all times on the football field, from every read to every throw to being able to line people up in certain spots. I really, really do believe that is where we're headed with Trevor Lawrence. And that's why I think this is such a big deal. That's why this is the approach that I thought should have been here all along. There were people that it was tongue in cheek, but folks were saying just draft Trevor and get out of the way. That's the total opposite of what you should do. They should have drafted Trevor, and they should have put all of this stuff around him, all of the support around him, and allow him to be great within the confines of that support until he, grows and develops as a player, and then he can expand that. And all of a sudden now he's just a walking version of the coach and the entire offense in the process. So I'm a firm believer in what they're doing right now is going to really, really help Trevor Lawrence more than it's going to help anyone. And if they do that, that's going to help the team. There's a lot of talk about whether or not Trevor Lawrence should be, do you give him a weapon or do you give him protection? When we talk about insulation, there's 2 ways to do it. One's in the draft and one's in free agency. Free agency comes first. On this show today, the draft's going to come first. I'm going to talk about a couple of prospects that I think the Jaguars should be looking really, really hard at the top, and why I think if you look at the value board, they're going to be valued. Evan Neal, I'm going to give it to you. I ain't going to even hold it back. Why a certain guy should be valued a certain way. And I'll do that in just a second here on a Monday on Locked On Jaguars. After I tell you about BetOnline.net. Football may be over for the season. The All-Star game for basketball was less than 24 hours ago. College hoops got coaches out there swinging on each other. All of this stuff is going on, and it's going to have an effect on the outcome of these games. All right, so for all the latest odds, totals, player performance props to where the next fired coach, we might know where that's going to be, is going to land, BetOnline.net is the number 1 spot for all your sports betting needs. BetOnline remains the best spot for all your sports scores, podcasts, and news this season. And it's not just basketball. BetOnline is your source for hockey, boxing, UFC odds, right to the Olympic coverage and information. Head to the website today and use your mobile device to learn more about the trends and action. BetOnline is where the game starts. And your podcasting day starts here with me on Locked On Jaguars. We're going to talk about the draft a little bit, and I'm going to give it to you with some with at least the context of free agency. And I know free agency comes first, but still, the reason why I'm going to do this is because it kind of fits with how I feel about the draft. When baseball teams draft, they draft for the best prospect long term, right? Sometimes it's not for immediate help, because most of the time the guy picked high in baseball doesn't help right away. Basketball has a little bit of sense of doing that as well. Football doesn't. Football, it seems like unless it's a quarterback, guys are always being drafted based on what can you do for me right now because my job is on the line. The Jaguars are not in that situation because they have a brand new coach with the number one pick. I do think that this pick should be the best available player. Now, it doesn't necessarily mean it's going to be the guy who grades out the best at his he might be the number one guy at his position, but he doesn't grade out to be better. A better like Evan Neal might not grade out to be a better offensive tackle than uh, Hutchinson. Aiden Hutchinson is as a defensive end. I think he probably will, but just to give you an example of what I mean, I don't think they should think so much about filling their roster right now. I think you do that if all things are even and you don't have separation between two guys, then you go, well, who's going to help us better? Now, I think the approach that they should take is as long as one guy isn't significantly better than the other, I think you need to say who makes us better over the long haul. That's the opinion that I'm of. What guy, and it's not even about positional value, but it's like what guy, when I add him to my team, makes me look the way I want to look when I win a championship. That's why I think it's the kid from Alabama, Evan Neal. Evan Neal's 6'7", 360 pounds, and is very, very athletic. He's a big, strong, and when I say big and strong, he makes you big and strong up front in protecting Trevor Lawrence. Now, everybody's going to say, well, the game is won with wide receivers. It's won with wide receivers. You're right. I thought Cincinnati should have taken Jamar Chase last year over Penei Sewell. Yeah, because I think he was just that much better. Kind of proved it out a little bit too, right? But you still can't deny the fact that if they could block better, they may have had some opportunity. So it's not as if you have to do one thing at a time. Cincinnati had a pick last year in the second round. They just picked the wrong dude. They could have picked somebody else. They could have picked Creed Humphrey. Creed Humphrey would have done a better job than some of the guys they have on the interior of their team. So it's not necessarily about hindsight. This is just really about foresight. I can just see Trevor Lawrence and Evan Neal 10 years from now being cornerstone pieces of this organization. It's really hard to look at it that way, but sometimes you just have to. It just seems like to me, if you get big number 73 and number 16, that they will be the kind of pieces that will be synonymous with winning over a long haul and a long term. That's just the way I feel about it. And I think Evan Neal has that sort of makeup. I like Kayvon Thibodeau a lot. I'm on record saying I like him more than I like Aiden Hutchinson. I think Hutchinson is a real good effort guy with some athletic traits. I just think Kayvon Thibodeau is just, I think he has a high ceiling and he's truly, truly special. And when people say he has a high ceiling, I don't know what the issues is with Thibodeau. What makes someone not like him? And that's what I don't get. I don't see the things that when they say he has a higher ceiling but a lower floor. I don't see a lower floor at all. Now I see a little bit of wondering whether or not he wants to make Jacksonville his home permanently. I mean, the kid's from LA. He's always got the real cool shades on. I don't know if he'll be that kind of guy who at some point wants to be kind of Hollywood and go. And I'm not knocking if that's what you want to do. Just, it's whatever. But the reason why I'm saying it like this is because I'm looking at the Jaguars from a long-term perspective. I'm looking at Jacksonville from this organization needs stability. This organization needs players that want to be here. They need guys that are going to be here for their career. They need to be able to retain good players. And I see it as a fit to where I know Doug Peterson wants to get big and physical. And there are a ton of pass rushers that you could get at the top of the second round, or if they address it in free agency. And we talked about coaches and connectivity. Everybody's talking about Chandler Jones being connected to Brinson Buckner, and Chandler Jones probably won't leave that mess out there in Arizona anyway. So there's Randy Gregory in Dallas. Now that marijuana ain't a problem in the NFL no more, he probably won't be getting suspended. So these are the things that I'm talking about. I think the way you can address your team, and regardless of what you do in free agency, I don't think Walker Little is good enough for you to not take Evan Neal and just assume that Walker Little is going to be your left tackle and Evan Neal is going to be your right tackle. I think Evan Neal is much better than him, and I know he is. And I think when he comes in, I think if you make anyone uncomfortable and you move them, you move Walker Little to right tackle and you put Evan Neal at left tackle. He's your best player. So a lot of people say, well, you don't need him. You got Walker Little at left tackle. I like Walker Little and I hope he continues to develop. But my point is this. When you've won 4 games in 2 years, you don't have the right to sit here and say, well, this kid that has promise is automatically good enough. No, if you think Evan Neal is all world at left tackle, then you pick him and put him, you plant him at left tackle, and then you take Walker Little and send him over to right tackle. That's what you do. You don't take the real talented guy and put him at right tackle just to appease the left tackle who's not better at left tackle than Evan Neal. You take Evan Neal and you say, okay, now everything's going to move around him. There's no one on that line right now, and I'm not including Brandon Linder because Brandon Linder is a great center, but there's no one really on this team outside of Trevor Lawrence that is like untouchable at their position. We have to, and these guys that have just come here, they ain't pick these people. So when you don't try to pigeonhole these guys and put them in a position where you already have this left tackle, he's pretty. No. Wait a minute. If I come in here, I'm picking the best guy for our future to match up with our quarterback, and we're gonna figure out wide receiver, we're gonna figure out edge rusher, we're gonna figure all of that stuff out later. But I'm taking him because I think he can block Thibodeau, and I think he can block Aiden Hutchinson all game. That's the guy I'm taking. I want that 6'7", 360 on my side of the ball. I want us to be big and physical. I don't have to deal with him. I don't want him to go to Houston and I got to deal with him. I want him here with us. That's what I want on my team more than I want any of that other stuff. I want him and my quarterback working together for the next 10 years. So that's my position on that. So now you guys understand that I hope the Jags take Evan Neal. And I said it months ago. And I got witnesses. And I got receipts. Got receipts, too, that the Locked On Bets podcast is something you need to be paying attention to when you're trying to figure out what you're going to wager and who you're going to wager with. You need to listen to your boy Q and Lee Sterling. Lee Sterling's an analyst and your boy Q is your host, and they get this thing right, man. So you need to pay attention to the Locked On Bets podcast. Find it wherever you get your podcast and make sure you like and subscribe. Like me here tomorrow too, man, because I'll be here again on Tuesday bringing you every single thing that I can about the Jaguars as we head into the offseason, getting ready for free agency and the draft. We'll be discussing that a little bit every single day along with the other things that we now have to start training our mind and getting used to. So we're going to have a whole bunch more positive podcasts now because I'm a little bit optimistic, and I'm cautiously optimistic, but I am. All right, until then, man, you guys take care of each other. Until tomorrow, we'll see you next time here on the Locked On Jaguars podcast.